All right, once you've got your design onto your final paper and you're all set and you've got it labeled around the outside of your design, you are going to then take a black crayon out of your crayon pack and you are going to outline your whole design. Use a ruler when you're outlining your design, just so everything looks nice and clean. This is going to help because when we're doing a watercolor color wheel, the colors tend to blend together, especially as they're still wet. When we're doing a regular color wheel, we usually don't outline first, we outline after we've created the entire color wheel. So today, because we're doing a watercolor color wheel, we're going to outline it with the crayon, and this is going to help the crayon kind of have a barrier between all of your sections, so they're not bleeding together too much. So I'm going to take my time and go around. Even though I've got it traced in pencil, I still want to outline it with the black crayon all the way around. Try and really stay on top of your pencil lines so that you're not seeing the pencil lines. It's a little hard to erase the pencil lines when you are, once you've got the crayon on, because it kind of smudges the crayon a little bit. So really try and stay where your crayon lines are. So I'm trying to hurry here. And then for the outer edge of the circle, you don't necessarily have to use the bowl again. You can kind of eyeball that one. I'll show you in just a second. Almost done. Okay, so now for the outer edge, I'm just going to kind of go one section at a time to try and keep it as perfectly circle as I can. If it gets a little off, that's okay. We are going to cut these out when we're all finished, so it's got a little margin for error. And then once you've got it all outlined in the black crayon, you are now ready to start doing the painting part. So I'm just going to kind of clean off any little smudges that might be there. If they don't come off, don't worry about it too much. They'll just add a little character to your color wheel. So here we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the red. It's a primary color. We're going to be doing the shade of the color and the tint of the color. The shade of the color is when you're adding black to the color, and the tint of the color is when you usually would add white if you were using regular paint, but since we're not using regular paint, we're going to be using just more water, so it'll dilute it down a little bit. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to pick where I want my original color to go. So I'm going to use red, and I'm going to put red right here in the middle. So I'm going to paint it in. You want it to be a fairly thick paint. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to keep the paint and the water about even consistency, and you are going to paint in that section. You want to be careful not to go out of your lines. The crayon will help keep it within your borders a little bit, but you've got to take your time in order to not go over the crayon border. You want to try and paint all the same direction. It shouldn't be pooling with a bunch of water. It should be nice and even. Once you've got that put in, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to dilute it down a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush, I'm going to dip it in the water, and I'm going to use the lid of my watercolor container, and I'm just going to keep adding a little bit more water to that, and that's going to really dilute down my paint. Then I'm going to paint in, I'm going to do this section down here. See how much lighter it is than the original color. So you should still see the color, but it should be a much more transparent color. Okay, so I've got that one painted in there. Now I need to do the shade of the color. So what I want to do is I want to go back to a lot more saturated color, like I have here. And now I'm going to just take a little bit of black and I'm going to add that in. Now I may have gotten a little too much there, So I'm gonna just take a little more red and come back and add that red. Usually you always wanna start with the lighter color and add the darker color to it because you'll see that change much more immediately. Whereas if you take the darker color and try to add the lighter color to it, it's gonna take a lot more of that lighter color to create the change. So now I've got this darker color, and I'm gonna go ahead and paint in that section for my shade. You want to make sure that you make up enough of the paint in order to fill in the section completely and evenly, so it's all going the same direction. All right, so now I've got my shade, I've got my original color, and I've got my tint. What I'm going to be putting here is the complement color. The complement color is the color that is directly across from it on the color wheel. So from directly across from red is green. So I'm going to be painting green in here. Now if I mix red and green together, I'm going to get a muddy brownish color, okay? Which you might want. When we do our next painting, you're going to do a tropical birds painting, and you can use red and green to get brown, different browns. So it's nice to know that, but when you mix them together and you don't want them to mix together, it kind of gives you that muddy brown color. But when you mix them and put them next to each other, they complement each other, hence the name complementary colors, but they kind of make the other one pop out. So you're going to go ahead and paint in the complement color into this section here. Okay, so another reason it's really important to label your color wheel, because it will tell you which your complement color is, the color right across from it. Now, right here, I kind of got a little green over into my tint, so I'm just going to come back with a clean brush, and I'm just going to kind of try to pick some of that color back up, at least a little bit, so it doesn't show that green. So if you get out of your lines or something like that, that's what you can do. The next thing we want to do is we want to show you how to make your in-between colors, okay? So you've got orange on your color palette, so you would just paint in orange, same way we did the red, and then you would use blue for your complement color. Now you want to have the complement colors always in the same space on your pattern. So your complement color is always going to be in these ones here. Your tint is always going to be in these ones here. Your regular color always in these middle ones, and your shade will always be these outer ones. So you want to remember that. So now I'm ready to do my red orange. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my brush nice and wet. I'm going to get quite a bit of orange on my brush, and I'm going to put it here on my palette. Now what I want to do is I want to take a little bit of red, and I'm going to put the red into the orange. I want to make sure that I've got enough orange in there so it does appear red orange and doesn't look like red, but I also don't want to have not enough red and then it looks like orange. You want to get that nice in-between color. So I'm going to go a little bit more orange in here, mix it real well, and now I'm going to paint this one in here. You can hop around the color wheel. You don't have to go exactly in order if you want to. So if you're doing your complementary color and you just want to do the green one, you can go ahead and do it that way. That's fine. Any way you feel comfortable doing it is okay. Just make sure you're paying attention to the labels on the outside of your color wheel. Otherwise, you might accidentally put a color in the wrong space, and then that kind of messes the whole color wheel up, and we have to do some fixing. All right, so I've got my red orange in. So now I'm just going to take what's on my brush. I'm going to come over here to the side to make it a little bit more watered down for my, that's not enough. I'm going to blot it on my palette here. There we go. And I'm going to paint this section in. I want a little more color so you can kind of see it a little better, but you still want it to stay transparent. So I've got that one. Now I didn't use all of my red orange here, so what I can do is I can rinse out my brush, dry it off a little bit, get a little clean water, take a little bit of black. I probably got a little too much, so I'm going to dab it on my palette, or on my paper towel. It's still going to be way too much, so I'm going to wash my brush out all the way, and now I'm going to mix this in. And I've got my red-orange tint. Some of your shade, I'm sorry, your red-orange shade. Some of your shades will be a little darker than others, just depending on how much black you add into it. There's really not a right or a wrong, as long as you can tell that it still has that original color in it. So red, orange, and black are going to give you a kind of a nice brownish color here. So now I'm just going to come back, clean up my lines so they're all going the same direction. And there's that. So then I would go ahead and I would make blue-green and put blue-green here. Now what I want to show you though is what orange is going to look like, so you can see what it should look like when they're all next to each other, because you really do want to see the difference between the colors. It should be a gradual change between your colors. So you can see the red, orange, and you can see the orange. Now if I'm going to do my yellow orange, I'm going to take yellow, starting with the lighter color first, new spot on my palette, and I'm going to add just a little bit of orange because it's going to change it really quick. I'm going to actually rinse my brush and start fresh with yellow, add some more yellow into that to really get a nice yellow-orange color. And now when I paint in my yellow-orange, you can see the difference. I'm going to take a little orange, a little more yellow, just to make it a little thicker in the paint so it's not so transparent. Like so. Then I'm going to take what's on my brush, new section, just let the water kind of add to it so that it dilutes the paint a little bit more. Okay, and then I'm going to add just a little bit of black. That's going to be way too much. A little bit of black to my yellow-orange here. It's going to make a little bit of a lighter brown, more of a warmer brown. Like so. And so I would continue all the way around my color wheel until I had all of my colors colored in. So I've got my red, orange, orange, yellow, green, green, blue, blue, violet, violet, red, violet. Then I've got all of my complement colors here, all of my tints here, and all of my shades around the outer edge. Once you're all finished painting, you're going to let it dry, because otherwise when you're manipulating the paper around, it could drip some of your paint. So you want to let it dry, and then you're going to cut it out.